Oh boy, here we are again. Oh boy. Oy vey, right? Oy vey, it's been a long week. Things just don't seem to ever go our way, do they? I'm going to give everybody a couple minutes to get in here, and we're going to talk about the news wire over the last 24 to 48 hours, the great disappointment, the great replacement, how they are so equally related. And we're just going to have a pretty casual session tonight. I got about an hour to kill before dinner, and so I figured why not hang out with you guys, spend it with some like-minded people, as if I had real friends anyways. You know, what am I going to do? Pick up the phone, hey, friend, you want to come over? I don't even have people like that. So, you guys get to be my surrogate friends. So I hope you have a beverage, preferably non-alcoholic, but listen, I got stuff all over here. If you want to pop the top on a cocktail, it is 5 o'clock on Friday. It is technically happy hour. So I'm glad to see everybody jumping in chat. What's going on? Bo loves music. Sean Samu, the world is a lie. That's the truth. Ira Benar, Burnch73, Bobby, KGR, Base Lex. I'm sipping on an Indian straight drink. I don't know what that even means. Is that like boba tea? Who makes boba tea? Is that Thai? I think that's Thai. I don't know. I hate boba tea. I swear to you, one of those like hippie, hipster, cool little new age things is to love boba tea. That shit is nasty. I don't want like clumps of noodles inside of my fruit beverage. It's disgusting. Like, I have no idea why anybody wants to be drinking a beverage like, oh, this tea sure is good. And then there's like a giant ball of what's kind of like a pasta-y, chewy little bubble. Shit is nasty, man. I don't know who thought of that. But there are people who go crazy for it. Especially, like, I was out in Portland for 7 years. And, like, honestly, I think a lot of it is they just want to reject traditionalism. They want to reject everything that is normal. Anything that is just like classically American. Here in the South, we have sweet tea. It's tea, you put sugar in it. It's sweet tea. They don't want to do that. They want to get something from Thailand and say that that's somehow superior to what we have created as a distinct concoction here in America. Save yourself the trauma. Do not try boba tea. I couldn't understand if it was bubble tea, boba tea, bubba tea. I think it's boba. So, I stick with my highly artificially sweetened, artificially colored, artificially flavored Coca-Cola Zero over here. Delicious. This is like my 8th artificially sweetened beverage of the day. No exaggeration. I sip on that stuff all day because I got to keep the calories low. You know, I do my intermittent fasting all day until 6 p.m. So I don't have a single calorie all day long until 6 p.m. No beverages with calories, no food, no snacks, nothing. But you want to stay satiated and you need to stay hydrated. So I sip on these 0-calorie artificially sweetened beverages from the point that I get up, which is usually like 6:30 or 7 in the morning, all the way to 6 at night. And then we go hard on the real calories. Then we eat like a whole pizza, a whole pan of nachos, like half a dozen tacos, a bunch of enchiladas, whatever it is of that night. 3 hot dogs with some chips. And then I go hard on a huge dessert, like a whole bunch of protein bars, chocolate chip this, birthday cake that, oatmeal raisin this. I don't do it for ketogenic purposes, Svenska. I don't do like keto intentionally. Intermittent fasting is not the same as keto. Keto is actually trying to intentionally not have sugar or any form of carbs in order to bring about the ketogenic state. I don't care about that. I don't need to be in a ketogenic state. How many calories do I eat at dinner? Every day I eat 2,500 calories during summer, which is low for me. Like, that's how I stay almost single percent body fat all summer long. That's my deficit calories. Now, during the fall and winter, I tend to have closer to 3,000 calories a day. But you're probably right, though, Sven. You unintentionally enter a ketogenic state, especially if you go multiple days with very low carbs. But I honestly eat a shit ton of carbs. Like, I eat a lot of carbs. When I finally do have that massive 2,500 calorie meal at the end of the day, it has a lot of carbs. Like, I eat 2 or 3 Cliff Bars, and each of those alone might as well actually be carb bars, not protein bars. And they're not even good carbs. That's why I say it's like, people really want to overestimate the importance of eating clean, whatever that's supposed to mean. It really comes down to calories in, calories out, and making sure your protein is on point. Whether or not the rest of your calories are coming from carbohydrates or fats, that's not going to change how much muscle you put on or how much body fat you have. That's going to be entirely dependent on your caloric intake, the law of thermodynamics, calories in versus calories out, and how much muscle you have is going to be dependent on your protein intake. You need to have adequate protein to preserve the muscle you already have to not go into a catabolic state, especially when you're in a caloric deficit like during summer like I am. If you don't keep your protein intake high, then you'll start to get into a catabolic state and you'll lose the muscle that you have already accrued. Okay, so tell you what Trump did. So I posted in my stories today several clips, memes, of an interview he did, I believe, yesterday on the All In podcast, where he sat there and said, braggingly so, that he thinks it would be a great idea if every immigrant currently living in America, legal or not, if they graduate from college, we should staple a green card to their diploma. A green card meaning you're allowed to stay here indefinitely now, and it puts you on the road towards permanent citizenship, meaning you can vote, you can do all the things that native-born Americans can do. So we don't want more immigrants here at all, and we certainly don't want more immigrants stuck here and with legal protection to stay here for as long as they want to stay here. If these people came here just to get college degrees and then leave, then that would be one matter. But if we're saying, hey, actually, we're going to beg you to stay and give you a legal status to protect your ability to stay unsolicited, like they didn't ask for this. He's saying we should proactively do this. Every college diploma, staple a green card to it. Okay, what are we doing? We should only be giving people the green cards who go through the legal process and have proven themselves to be a net asset, not a liability for our country. Somebody holding a college degree isn't evidence that they are a net asset. They have to go and actually provide proof of them creating lots of money, creating good ideas, obeying the law. And those are things they should be bringing with them from wherever they're from. Not, hey, you have the next 10 years of your life living here in America to show us if all of this will be true. And we sure hope it's going to be true. We sure hope you don't, now that you have a green card, sit here and collect benefits and abuse our welfare and social care systems. That's not what the immigration system is set up to do. The immigration system is set up to pre-select for the best of the best candidates from all over the world who are going to come and bring us things that we couldn't have otherwise done on our own, or things we didn't know. Whatever it was that the American people were not providing, they're supposed to be supplemental and fill in the gaps. They're not supposed to be substitutes for. They're not supposed to be, you are now equal in worth to everybody who's here, whose ancestors fought and died to protect this place, who actually came up with all of our systems, the design of our education system, the design of our government, who chose the religious fabric of this nation to be Christianity and nothing else. Allowing anybody and everybody to come to our country and do whatever they want here for however long they want, so long as 4 years during that time span they sat around in whatever college and got whatever degree, whether or not it's useful or not. Not a fan of that idea. So on Trump specifically, though, the whole argument was people like Nick and myself and others who are aware of the Jewish problem. We have been saying that, look, this guy just took $100 million from Sheldon Adelson's widow, Miriam Adelson, who told him that this $100 million I'm giving you so that you can win the 2024 election it comes with strings attached, and the strings attached are uniquely Jewish interests, those interests being specifically that Israel will be able to legally annex the West Bank and formalize the settlements that they have there that have previously been against the law. They want them to say that these are now in adherence to the law because this is now Israel's sovereign territory. And so this is the exchange. This is one of the things that Israel and the Jews are buying from Trump by giving him this money so that he can run his election. The whole argument was, well, even if this clearly means Trump is still beholden to the Jews and all the money he's taking from them, he's kind of the lesser of two evils, because at least if we put Trump in office, he'll do something about the border. It'll fix the immigration situation. Okay? So that argument gets completely blown out of the water when Trump goes out and says, green cards for everybody who gets a college degree. What? That was not what we thought the one thing you were going to do for us was. We thought you were going to protect the ethnic demographic of this country and to make sure it stays a white European country. What's going on, Harley? What's going on? All the new people jumped in chat. What was that message that said something about Arabs? As an Arab, just curious, why do you specifically say the Jews? That's a very long, it's a very long question. That's like kind of the whole point of the platform. There's 1,900 posts on my Instagram where you can dig into why I specifically mention the Jews. The Jews are by far the most powerful lobbying group in America. Lobbying group meaning these are the people who pay to put politicians in the government. I know, it's nice. I'm out here in the backyard. You guys can take a look. We got little man over here. He's doing his thing. Say hi, Gilbert. I'm sure your parents could go into that and give a good answer. Oh, you're talking to the other Arab there. Yeah, it's kind of surprising, honestly. I thought most Arabs kind of understood that you guys and the Jews have some problems going back a long ways, at least the last 80 years in terms of Israel forcing itself upon being your neighbor and telling you that, hey, you guys got to get out of the way. Remain a white European country. What do I mean by that? Good question. Panadev, I don't know if you're an American yourself, but there's obviously people who are not American in the chat. America was settled by white European people in the early 1600s, like 1604, 1605, 1606. The very first people to get here. Now, I'm not saying we were the first people on the continent. There were obviously people who were native to the land, the Mexica, the Aztec people, whoever it was, the various tribes of Native Americans. They were here, but that was not America. That was their own thing. Whatever they were doing based on their pagan religion and their own tribal cultures, that was one civilization. It had teepees, and it had human sacrifice and cannibalism and perpetual warfare. That's what was going on, pre-1600. And then the British and the Dutch decide to send some people over here for multiple reasons. For one, they were trying to discover trade routes, they thought, to India for spices and other things. But more importantly, if you actually read the documentation on the Mayflower Compact, you'll see that the initial settlers had a very strong passion for spreading the word of Jesus Christ, what we call the gospel, the teachings of Jesus, the offer of Jesus, that we can all be saved from ourselves and our sinful nature, experience an eternal life with the creator of the universe after we die. We were supposed to teach the new world about this Jesus Christ. They had no idea. They had never heard. They were all doomed to eternity in hell for not knowing that there was such an offer. Now, of course, Jesus saves all of those who are never exposed to the gospel, but that's a whole complicated story about limbo, and we're not going to go there. But the point being, the initial settlers, the white European people who get here in the early 1600s, were extremely devout in their faith, their Protestant Christianity. The very first buildings they built, other than homes, were churches. The very first books that they were transcribing were Bibles. The very first schools they built used the Bible to teach people to learn how to read and to teach them morality. These people were devoutly Christian. Whenever they formed the colonial governments, there's 13 original colonies that would go on to become American states. Before they were called states, they were called colonies. And just like every state now has a state constitution, meaning these are the principles of that state. This is the law of the land. This is what we believe, and this is what our purpose is. And the design of the government of that state. This is how we're going to elect leaders and what those leaders are responsible and accountable for doing. All of the original colonies had these as well. Before they became states, they were called colonies, and they had colonial constitutions. And so when you go and look at those colonial constitutions, amongst almost all of them, they say explicitly that positions in government can only be filled by white Christian men. And the right to own property was an explicitly reserved for only white men. But the more important part is about the government. The government back then was defined as a Christian European government. We're bringing over the democratic Republican methods, constitutional methods that we learned from our European civilizations, and we're imbuing them with the Christian morality. And that's going to be the law of the land, and that's going to be how it functions. And that was how America worked from 1600 all the way to 1776 is the Declaration of Independence, where we say that Great Britain can no longer rule over us, and we are now an autonomous sovereign nation over ourselves. And part of achieving that was bringing all of the states that had been created underneath one banner called the United States of America, rather than these 13 individual colonies or how many ever there were at the time. So the United States, though, the United States Constitution, rather than these little state constitutions, they created a new constitution that was going to say this is how the federal government over all of the states works. And within that constitution, they declared it one nation under God, not Jesus Christ. Very disappointing, very disappointing. And there's a reason for this, and the reason is that many of the founding fathers, what we call the men who wrote the Declaration of Independence and designed the methods of the government and what needs to be written in law versus implied, the majority of them were Freemasons, and this requires a little bit of an education about Freemasonry, but Freemasonry was a creation of the Jews to basically obscure the idea that God has a unique identity and it must be correctly identified. That's a Christian belief. The Christian belief says that God is Jesus Christ, no other alternatives. Jesus Christ himself says this in the book of John, chapter 14, verse 6. He says, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. So that's Jesus saying that you cannot have a relationship with God without going through Jesus Christ. He is your intermediary. If you're praying and you're not praying to Jesus Christ, you're not reaching God. So this is tough news for all of our Muslim followers because they pray to Allah. They do not pray to Jesus Christ. This is tough news for all the Jews because they certainly don't pray to Jesus Christ. They pray to God or Yahweh or whatever they think is God. Bad news for all the Hindus. They pray to the cow god and the god of fertility and the god of fire and the god of the wind and the god of the earth and all this other goofy shit. This is bad news for all the pagans. It's bad news for the Satanists who pray to Lucifer. It's very bad news for everybody who's not a Christian because the Christian faith is exclusionary. It says you either believe that Jesus Christ is God because that's what Jesus said, or you're worshiping a false idol. Every other religion is some kind of machination or deception of Satan. Satan has convinced billions of people that God has some other identity other than Jesus Christ. He's a clever guy. Satan's been lying to people ever since Adam and Eve. Very, very convincingly, he whispered in the ear of Eve, hey, what is God's right to withhold wisdom from you? Who's to say? What's so bad? What's going to happen if you disobey God and eat from the tree of knowledge? What, God's trying to withhold knowledge from you? What kind of good and caring God would do that? And we all know the rest. Eve falls for it. She then takes her stupidity and gives it to Adam and says, hey, nothing happened to me when I bit it. No big deal. Why don't you have a bite? And this is called the fall of man. This is the creation story. This is original sin. I think actually Christianity is the only religion that believes in this concept of original sin. And it means that we all, after Adam and Eve, every single human being until the end times, inherits this sinful behavior from our original ancestors, Adam and Eve. This is why we are all tempted by lust, and why we're all tempted with gluttony and sloth and envy and pride. I could go on for a long time about this, because this gets you to eventually the necessity of Jesus Christ. Because for the next how many ever thousand years, people are continuing to pull themselves down through this addiction to sinful behavior. They're continuing to sell themselves short in the short term and think, oh, it's not a big deal if I sleep with somebody who's not my wife, and it's not a big deal if I tell some lies over here to advance my own agenda. It's not a big deal if I do whatever I want versus what I am told God wants us to do. And this, if you read the Old Testament, this is the repeating story over and over again. To the people that God spoke directly to, he gave them a code on how to live. He spoke directly to Moses, telling him, here's the 10 Commandments. You know, the things like, thou shalt not kill, shall not bear false witness. There's 10 of them. I can't remember them all off the top of my head. Thou shalt not talk poorly of your mother and father. I can't remember exactly how it's phrased. I can't remember the other ones off the top of my head. Not an Old Testament scholar. I'm more of a New Testament scholar. So anyways, God passes down these very clear directives, and his people choose to ignore his directives over and over again. Thou shalt not worship false idols is another one, meaning false gods. You shouldn't think that, oh man, it hasn't been raining lately. Maybe I should pray to the rain god. You know, like that's not a thing in the Christian faith. There is no rain god. It sure is cold out. We should pray to the sun to hope the sun comes back out. Pray to the giant flaming thing in the sky. That's not a Christian practice. That's idolatry. So through all of these ancient cultures, they were practicing idolatry. They were worshiping all these false gods. And the people that God chose to speak directly to, the ancient Israelites, he told them, do not fall into those behaviors. Do not worship false idols. Don't bear false witness. Don't kill each other. You know, just because you don't like somebody doesn't mean you can kill them. Just because you don't like somebody doesn't mean you can bear false witness against them. These things have severe implications when you do them. You hurt yourself, you hurt society, and you offend God. And that is the definition of sin. It's the distance that gets formed between us and God whenever we do these things. And so the objective of Satan, who you remember occupied the snake, who lied to Eve to create sin within humans. People were initially created, Adam and Eve, without sin. We would have been just fine up until this day had Satan not lured Eve into taking a bite of this apple from the forbidden tree of knowledge. But here we are, and Satan is doing the same thing to this day on a global scale. Probably shouldn't use that word global, but we should probably say on a scale of all humanity. How many billion people are on the planet now? 8 or 9 billion? He is always whispering in our ear all of those things that have been known for thousands of years to be unhealthy. Maybe things have changed. You know what? Homosexuality, people knew for thousands of years that was wrong, but maybe things have changed. You know, we're a different species now. We have airplanes and air conditioning, so we've just come a long way. Let's just ignore the old rules. It's like, that sounds kind of like Satan just making up his own rules so that he can achieve his agenda, which is the separation of all of us from God. Now, you might ask, why does Satan care so much about separating people from God? jealousy, pride, his own ego. This is where you have to read the Old Testament, because you have to be familiar with who Satan is, who Lucifer is, the light bringer, the angel of light, who appears as an angel of light. So, the story of Satan, Lucifer, was that he was actually an angel in heaven, and he was amongst the most capable, intelligent, beautiful angels in all of the legions of angels in heaven. However, he became prideful. He became egotistical. He started, you know what? I really am the shit. I really am worth following. I think maybe some of these other angels up here, what was it? I think it was an entire third of the angels in heaven, that Lucifer convinced that he was so capable himself that maybe they should follow him rather than follow God. This is the sin of pride. So that's why they call pride the original sin. And so, it's a fun story. Basically, God says, matter of fact, you are so beneath me in terms of power and capability. Mr. Highest of all the angels can do anything that God can do. Lucifer brings about this rebellion of the angels against God. And God says, you know what? In a way that I can do, I'm going to show you how much more infinitely powerful I am than you by simply sending somebody else to crush you. I don't even have to show up. He sends, what's his name? Michael, Archangel Michael, to deal with the problem. He sends Michael down to confront Satan, and this is, a famous depiction where he's crushing Satan under his heel. And so God doesn't even have to personally respond to this Lucifer character to go and quash the problems. He sends his top angel in his command, Michael, and says, go deal with this guy. And he does. And Satan and his 1/3 of rebellious angels become fallen angels, because they are kicked out of heaven and they are sent down to the earthly realm and the nether realm, hell, to live until Jesus Christ comes back and completely ends this existence. All of it. So, that's all Old Testament stuff. But the whole jealousy thing. So, Lucifer gets himself kicked out of heaven. And this is a wake-up call that says God would prefer... I'm skipping chapters here, but after Lucifer gets cast out, God goes and creates human beings, and he gives them a infinite amount of love, to the point that we can really screw up over and over and over again our entire life until the day we die. But so long as we recognize him in our dying breath as sovereign over all, the most powerful, there is no question, no ambiguity, then we are saved. Now, of course, we have to recognize him accurately. We have to recognize him as Jesus Christ. But the point is that God loves human beings so much that rather than just strike us down and cast us into hell like he did with Lucifer, he gives us an entire lifetime to repent. We can be just as prideful as Lucifer was. We can say, you know what? I'm God here on earth. I'm going to lead an army myself. And I think I can do whatever I want. All of that. And this is the hedonistic atheist lifestyle. And God says, I have every ability to just wipe you out right now and not even have to blink. But I'm going to let you stay alive because I love you. And I'm going to let you continue to blaspheme me and ignore me, make fun of my people, hurt other people. I'm going to give you a chance to repent and save yourself from eternal damnation. That's how much God loves human beings. Another example of how much God loves human beings is the famous verse, John 13:6. Z Hodgson 35. Is this stream going to be on Rumble later? Yeah, I'll upload it on Rumble. I'll save it. It'll be saved on Instagram, Catalina, and it'll also be saved on Rumble. So if you guys are familiar with possibly the most well-known Bible verse in the entire thing, especially New Testament, John 3:16, which is, for the Lord so loved the world that he sacrificed his only begotten Son, who is obviously Jesus. As a bodybuilder, can you comment on how the most powerful lobby in this country is a bunch of 5'7", scrawny, whiny bankers? Fair enough. Well, there's a lot of memes out there about Jews and how they have a historical aversion to manual labor. There's a joke about the Holocaust. There's a joke about the Holocaust that says the reason why Jews are so sensitive about the Holocaust is because this is the most recent time in the last 100 years that they were forced to do manual labor. They were forced to do work. And because they are such intellectual people, they see manual labor, like doing farm work or being a carpenter. They kind of hate carpenters. I don't know if you ever noticed that. But doing manual labor with your hands, they don't see themselves as like that. That's for the paid employees. That's for the slaves. That's for the goyim. I mean, this is actually from their text. They say that in the future utopian world that they run, the goyim, who are the 98% of the world who are not Jewish, they will only be allowed to exist so that they can fill these practical needs of tending the fields and managing the crops and all this. That's why they're allowed to live, and they don't just slaughter them completely and exterminate them entirely. We are farm animals to them. We are the donkey who pulls their cart. So that's why the Jews don't get involved with bodybuilding. There's just not that many of them historically. They're not a physical people. They're not out there trying to get strong and capable. Kind of disappointing, you know. God gives you one body. You got to take care of it. And ideally, try to achieve its most potential. You know? Gilbert's over here looking at me. It's hot out here. He's panting. Okay, so let's look at these stories. I mean, somebody asked about the Trump thing. The long story short there is that we were all trying to say Trump was the lesser of two evils because even though he's going to give Israel everything they want, he's going to do important things that we want too, such as making sure we don't become a 30% Hispanic company. My words are just awful tonight. A 30% Hispanic country. Golly, it's like corporation, company, country. We don't want to become a 30% Hispanic country, and we don't want to become a 20% African country. We don't want to become any more Jewish than we currently are. In fact, I think we should probably tone it down on the Jewishness in America. We should probably take that 2% and make it 0% by asking them to go live somewhere else. I don't mean hurt them. You know, obviously, I'm a Christian. I don't mean violence. But I don't think the Jewish people have any place running America. That's for sure. We can negotiate whether or not they can stay in the part of the country that is allowed to have religious openness. But the problem is they will use that and accumulate their usurious resources. They will employ usury over that non-religious part of the world, and they will capture them, and they'll develop influence, and then they'll send their spies into the Christian part of America, and they'll infiltrate from within, and we'll be back in the same scenario in 200 years. So this is why every country, all 109 of them in history, came to the ultimate conclusion that they just have to go. Like, I'm sorry, it's not about hating them. We don't hate them. But when you let them stay, they will eventually, through their own immoral tactics of blackmail, deception, usury, pushing cultural erosion, pushing demographic replacement. This is the playbook every single time. And so if you let them stay, this is what they will do from within. Now, the problem is they also do this from without. What people call globalism. You guys ever heard that word, globalism? Oh, it's the World Economic Forum. It's the World Health Organization. It's the Bilderberg Group. It's the Council on Foreign Relations. All of these international groups, they're run by an international people. Do you ever make that connection? George Soros, Larry Fink. All of the heads of the World Health Organization and the World Economic Forum are either Jewish themselves or they're receiving some kind of backing from Jewish billionaires. They are an international people, meaning they do not care about nationalities or nations. They want a one world nation. Their desire, and this is the Jewish scripture, was like, I don't know how people miss it. I don't know how people think that globalism is anything other than Judaism. It is Judaism without the word Judaism. It is bringing about a future world where people who think communism, a Jewish creation, is the ideal way to run a global population. Not one country, not a carve out for one race of people. They think that this is how the entire globe, if we think it's a globe, should function. That there should be a tiny, less than 1% of the population who decide everything for the 99% of the population. They decide what career you can have. They decide whether or not you can get married, whether or not you can have kids, what food you eat, whether or not you can have firearms to defend yourself, whether or not you're allowed to vote, whether you have any role whatsoever in the government. That is communism. And it is a distinctly Jewish creation because it's meant to fulfill the Jewish agenda. There is no other way. You can't have a democratically elected republic beholden to a constitution under the Jewish-style utopia. That doesn't work, and that's why they have to destroy any nation with that model. They have to destroy any other type of democracy, any other type of republic, any kind of monarchy that stands to maintain its own religion. That has to be destroyed. There is no way to reach the Jewish utopia without destroying every nation's own methods. They have to install global communism, which is synonymous for globalism. People think that globalism means, oh, we're just all participating in global trade now. That's what globalism means. We all get to enjoy the benefits of outsourcing labor and bringing in stuff that we can't manufacture here because it's not native to here. Those are aspects of globalism, but globalism as an endpoint is a global government, is global governance. And there is no way to maintain a global government without an excessive, an inhuman amount of force. I mean, look at how turbulent any individual nation is with its rulership, its 1% class versus its working class and its lower class. These things are in perpetual conflict and always have been. If you try to imagine a global population getting along and marching in order, this is a foregone conclusion. There's no way it's going to work. This is one of the reasons why people looked at those Georgia Guidestones that said the world population has to be reduced to, it was like 500,000 or 5 million or something like that. Some very small number. They say that part of the reasoning for that is because the elite know that they can't actively micromanage the behavior of billions of people. It's just not going to work. Like the number of police force and enforcers you would need, it would have to be like 20% of the population are in place just to make sure the lower portion don't get out of control. So you end up with an enormous police state. You end up with an enormous reliance on things like artificial intelligence. Have you noticed that? How popular and how they say that it's a foregone conclusion. We have to perfect this technology and utilize this technology. No, we don't. We don't need this technology. We have not had artificial intelligence for, 2,020 years, something like that. I mean, and that's just since Jesus Christ. However old the planet is, 4,000, 5,000 years old, we got along just fine without artificial intelligence. We don't need it in order for the future of humanity to be prosperous and healthy. But they're telling us that this is the way of the future. There's no stopping it. We have to have it. We need it. And that is because it's going to play a large role in managing society when the head count, when the individual people who will volunteer to subjugate their neighbors and subjugate the rest of their community, they get the little police badge, they get to have a cool outfit, they get to have a nice salary. They're going to be lured in by the status, the reputation, and the worldly things to be the enforcer class of communism. There's going to be a large slice of people who are willing to sell their souls to the government, which is just selling your soul to Satan, so that they can protect themselves out of self-interest. They'll say they're doing it for their family. They'll say they're doing it for whatever reason to make them feel better at night. But That's how the Goyim are going to get used against each other. But I mean, this is the thing. I don't think it's going to work, by the way. Not to be, spoiler alert, but spoiler alert, humanity's not going to go along with this. And two, God won't allow it. God will not allow the devil to conquer earth. He allows him to rule over places at times throughout the earth. He is absolutely the ruler of this realm. It says so in the Bible. It's not a controversial thing to say that Satan is the ruler over this time and place here. And if you've never looked outside, you can probably notice that that's true. People who have no belief whatsoever in God, don't even understand where they came from, don't understand the implications of their behavior, think that there's no eternal consequences to life, that there's no purpose for being here. It's Satan's world that we live in. Now, God has authority and sovereignty at any point to say, my world, it's mine now. And he will. He will. We know that day is coming because Jesus told us that day is coming. What we can watch out for in the meantime, as far as when that time is coming, in the book of Revelations, it actually gives us a prescription as far as what to watch out for. They're called birthing pains. That's what the book of Revelation calls them. He says, don't mistake, though. Do not mistake birthing pains for the birth. The birthing pains, some of the ones that we are going to see as the end times come near, are deception and disbelief. These are the birthing pains of the end of the world. And so you look outside and you see how this world is run on deception and disbelief. That should be very worrisome for all of us Christians, because those are the birthing pains of the end times. That's what the book of Revelations tells us. But as I said, birthing pains are not the birth itself. We still have time to clean up our own behavior. We still have time to save as many people as we can before the inevitable end comes. We see the birthing pains, and that's supposed to tell you the birth is coming. You see the deception? This is just like seeing contractions in a woman. When you see our entire political class completely rotten to the core, operating solely on deception, you see the nation of Israel, whose intelligence agency's motto is make war through deception. Deception at a global scale is like the contractions when you're watching a woman who is pregnant and getting close to labor. That's a birthing pain. You're supposed to recognize that as meaningful, that the birth is coming. And likewise, the apostasy that we see in the world. You look at America just as a microcosm of it, where our country used to be 90% Christian, people who devoutly believed that Jesus Christ was God. This was true only 60 years ago. And this is not me pulling statistics out of thin air, 90%, yeah, whatever. No, it's actually true according to Pew Research Center and Gallup polls. When you just went out and gave people a poll, you went door to door back in the 1960s in America. Hey, are you Christian? What religion are you? 90% of the country responded, yes, I'm Christian. In the last 60 years, that number has fallen all the way down to 50%. And the number is less than that, truly, because just because somebody purports to be Christian does not mean they're actually reading the Bible on a regular basis, or attending church on a regular basis, or praying on a regular basis, or participating in missionary work, fellowship with other Christians, talking about the Word. So, at best, 50% of the country claim to be Christian. But practicing Christianity, following Jesus Christ by the book, that's a number that we don't even know. I mean, we know somewhat because there are studies that give us church attendance rates and Bible readership rates. And I'm not even going to share them because it's too black-pilling. You don't even want to know how many Christians are not even reading their Bibles, are not even going to church. I am not Catholic. I'm by default Protestant. But I do think Catholicism probably has the truest interpretation of Jesus' teachings, including the necessity of an organized hierarchical church to preserve his teachings, the doctrine, the canon. And so there's a good chance at some point in my life I'll go through RCIA, but we'll see. I'm still trying to figure that out. The birthing pains, the deception, and the apostasy, people turning away from God, we're seeing it happen right before our very eyes. And so as Christians, that's supposed to be a warning for us that it's time to get right. Whether or not the end times are next week or next year or in the next century or millennium, it's still the time to get right. Nothing changes whether or not today is a good day to open up your Bible and remember what exactly it says. Do your Bible study. Whenever the end times are, it doesn't change whether or not today is a good day to share the gospel with other people, because there is an urgent need to get things back on track in our country, for one. Like, even if you're not like sitting here obsessed about the end times and whether or not they're coming, okay, a lot of the reason America sucks right now and we're going to lose our country is because people don't even care about God. They don't even care about a universal morality. They don't care whether or not marriage is between a man and a woman. They don't care whether or not abortions to the tune of 1 million per year. We're having 1 million people sacrifice their children to the devil every year. And you think God is going to bless this nation while we're in this state? Of course not. So whether or not the end times are next week or next year or next millennium, there is an urgent need to get our country back on track spiritually. And this is only done by sharing the gospel. So, today is a good day for you guys to do a little bit of Bible study, listen to a sermon. I know it's the end of the day. Look, let's be realistic. Okay, guys, I'll be realistic with you. It's 5 or 6 p.m. on a Friday. You just worked all week. I'm sure you're probably not dying to spend the rest of your Friday evening doing Bible study and watching a sermon online or something like that. I'm not saying drop everything you're doing right now and go do those things. What I am saying, though, is that all of our lives, because God blesses us so, have the time to do these things on a regular basis. Maybe it's not daily, but it absolutely is weekly. There's not anybody out there who doesn't have time, 1 to 2 hours a week, to sit there and listen to a sermon and or read the Bible. There's not anybody out there who doesn't have time at the end of their day when they're laying in bed trying to fall asleep to say the Lord's Prayer, to say the Serenity Prayer. You know what? Even if you don't have a prayer memorized, I know for a fact you have the time when you lay down in bed at night before you're asleep. You don't just lay down, boom, sleep, done. I know you may be tired and you may be exhausted and it might take 5 minutes to fall asleep, but if it's a conscious, intentional thought, it's part of your nightly routine. I lay down, I pray. Just like before you went to bed, you brushed your teeth no matter how tired you were, right? I hope you guys are brushing your teeth. Prayer should be the same way. I mean, can you believe this? Can you believe that we have Christians who make it a more habitual behavior that they are committed to brush their teeth than pray to God, than to seek the wisdom of the creator of the universe, than to petition the almighty, all-powerful, all-knowing, the sovereign authority over all humanity. You have an opportunity to go to him every single day and say, these are the things I'm struggling with. Nobody else seems to be helping me. The world's not doing me any favors. No one's giving me any hookups. Nothing's falling into my lap. Maybe if I talk to God about these issues, something might change. They don't want to do it. They want to make sure they brush their teeth. They want to make sure they watched 6 episodes of something on Netflix before they went to bed. And they want to spend their entire weekend watching college football and professional football and then the basketball and then the baseball. And then they want to go to the movies and see the newest thing. And then they want to go out to Applebee's and spend an hour and a half waiting on shitty food. But they don't have time to pray. They don't have time to read the Bible. They don't have time to go to church. You're liars. You're all liars. If you think that that's how you can live your life, but then come at the end of the day and say, yeah, I just don't have time for that, you know you're lying. You're deceiving yourself, and at great cost. Your life could be much, much happier, much less stressful, much more blessed. You guys see my life and people think I have it like super duper cozy. I do. I do. And I'm not trying to be egotistical and brag, and I'm not saying I'm favored by God over other people. What I'm saying is I pray every single day of my life. I make it a habit to go to church, and when I can't go to church, I attend a sermon online. I make it a habit to engage my fellow Christians, which is called fellowship. I make it a habit to get out there and do missionary work, which is service for God, trying to bring people to God. And it is for these reasons that God gives me these amazing surroundings. It's not for me to sit around looking cool on Instagram. He has overwhelmed me with blessings out of pure love and appreciation for the fact that I actually still care about him, and I'm willing to put everything I have on the line for him. Good story about this. Last year, I got this house, okay? This beautiful place. You know, look around. I got this gorgeous backyard with a pool. It's on a lake. It's 5 bedrooms. It's way more than any person really needs. It's certainly more than I deserve, given that I spent 20 years agnostic. It's too much, okay? But nonetheless, God gave me a career. He gave me certain skills. He put opportunities and circumstances in front of me so that all of this could come together over multiple decades to give me the ability to have this home that will eventually be the temple that protects a house, all of which, the temple that protects a family, all of which will be doing the same thing that I'm doing, which is trying to protect Christendom. It's our fortress. That's why I believe he gave it to me. It is absolutely not for vanity's sake of wanting to feel special whenever somebody pulls up to the front door and says, oh, wow, look at that house. Or on an Instagram, oh, wow, look at that. And I certainly never prayed for it. I did not pray, hey, God, can you please give me a big house? Can you please give me a beautiful backyard? Can you please give me a career that makes 6 figures? And all? That's not what I prayed for. What I pray for on a nightly basis is that God will use me as a vessel to bring about his kingdom here on earth, to protect and preserve his teachings and to get them as far out as possible, to make it available for every human out there so that nobody has any excuse about the pains they're suffering, about their fate when it comes to when they die. Oh man, what happened? Why did I end up in hell? You remember that time when somebody shared the gospel to you and you said, oh, that's just a book of fairy tales? Do you remember that time? This is what's going to happen. Or you have all the people who made these Faustian bargains, who Satan whispered in their ear in the form of some Jewish talent agency saying, hey, I can make you the most famous actor or the most famous musician or the most famous director, the most famous writer. I can make you the most famous politician. I can give you the power over an entire nation if you just do these things for Satan. If you just say you support abortion. If you just say there's no problem with usury. If you just say marriage is between 2 people who love each other, not exclusively between man and woman. If you just do things like support ongoing violence all over the world, like funding foreign nations' wars. If you do those things, Satan will reward you with great wealth and great reputation in this world. But Satan can't give you anything after death. And I gotta say, it's not all about the afterlife. Your time spent here as well, I promise you. This is why you look into these billionaire families. Look at Hunter Biden. Do you look at Hunter Biden's life and think that that man is healthy and living in accordance to God and happy and fulfilled? Do you think a string of prostitutes and cocaine and debauchery and risking going to jail, do you think that that's actually a happy, healthy, normal life for somebody to live? You look into these uber wealthy families and you will find that they've been given everything the world claims is important. They've been given the right last name. They've been put into the movies. They've been given as much money as they want. They ride a limousine everywhere. They wear $5,000 suits and $3,000 watches, and they drive a Lamborghini. They have 2 million followers. They have all of this stuff. And then they get exposed, as they always do, for having made some kind of deal where they had to compromise knowing what God tells them is right, and they intentionally chose the opposite. It's pretty disappointing that it's happened over and over and over again, but we started the stream out talking about original sin, and that it's not unique to these celebrities, it's not unique to these politicians. This is a human condition. This is what the gospel and the Bible are for, is to try to save us from this condition. The condition of a hopeless addiction to sin. It's to try to minimize our sinful behavior, knowing that we will never eradicate it. We will never become perfect people. We'll never have zero impulses of lust, gluttony, sloth, pride, envy, and so on. We're never going to become just fully sinless. But the point of the Bible is to teach you, A, how to identify these harmful behaviors, B, that they are not only harmful to yourself, but they are harmful to the entire society when you normalize them, C, set the expectation that you're only human, that you know you're not going to become sinless no matter how hard you try. But D, most importantly, is that you never start lying. You never start saying sin is not sin. Lying is okay. Sleeping with people's spouses is okay. Homosexuality, transgenderism are okay. Aborting your child is okay. The purpose of the Bible is to say that we're all going to fall down in these various sinful ways. We're going to be too prideful at times. We will succumb to lust at times. But what we cannot do, we can never ever relapse or fall into the hedonistic, barbarous behavior of saying, you know what? I didn't die as soon as I did that thing. I guess that means it's okay. I mean, this is how the hedonistic world thinks. You go participate in some orgy, you all wake up and go to work the next day as if nothing happened. I guess that means that orgies are okay. I told this lie about somebody to help me get a promotion. That person's not dead. I'm not dead. Doesn't seem to have hurt anybody. I got a promotion. I guess it's not wrong. I heard a very corny acronym a long time ago, 5 years ago, to be exact. In the very first life group that I was in, the very first church I started attending after being born again, I was in this life group with some other Christians, and they were teaching me about the Bible because I hadn't even read it yet, you know. And they were kind of talking about the Christian lifestyle. And one of them mentioned this acronym. They said, I don't know if you guys have ever heard this, but Bible actually stands for, does anybody know this? Drop it in chat if you know it. They say that the Bible stands for Basic Instructions Before Leaving Earth. Now, we all know that Bible actually means, it's translated, the original definition means books, because it is literally a collection of books. But that's a helpful acronym for you guys to stay grounded in, because it is truly your basic instructions before leaving Earth. As I said, the expectation is not, okay, now I know what sins are, now I never sin again. That's not the expectation of Christianity. The expectation is that now that you know what they are, we protect those definitions. We do not allow society to tell us anything otherwise. And we slowly, over time, participate less in these sinful behaviors, hopefully to the point that you fully disengage from them, which is possible. Not to disengage from all forms of sin simultaneously, but you can become a less prideful person. You can become a less gluttonous person. You can become less lustful, and so on. It takes self-denial, which is, yet again, the entire story of Christianity. It takes humility, which is, yet again, a core component of Christianity. To say, you know what, I thought I knew the way to life, was just kind of doing whatever I want. I was wrong. We have to defer to the Bible. We have to defer to the basic instructions we received from God to clean our lives up and to clean ourselves up before we leave this earth. That's what we have to do. We actually have a purpose for our lives. Atheists do not. They're just here as primordial ooze trying to have as many orgasms as possible and become as famous as possible. And that's the purpose for their life. It's sad and pathetic, but that's actually how people live. Anyway, I got 10 seconds to wrap this up, you guys. I had a great night talking to you. I hope you enjoy it. I'll save this here on Instagram and on Rumble. Follow my backup before I get banned at Beholding the Truth Official.